Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from the Devin Townsend project, Z² Sky Blue. Now, I mentioned in the past that there are certain musical acts that have an insane work ethic. Acts that will pump out distinctive, unique, potent material that somehow manages to maintain a standard of real quality. Now, from my observations, these acts tend to fall into two distinctive camps. Acts that have somewhat of a formula that allows them to subtly augment it with every single release, and acts that simply have so many different ideas that they have to let them all explode forth on project after project, with some of the ideas inspire genius, some of the ideas merely inspired, and some that inspire headaches for everybody involved. And no, I'm not talking about Lil Wayne and his album mixtape releases and all sorts of their inconsistency. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the more eclectic figures in metal, a fellow Canadian musician who has already dropped a country and blues flavored record earlier this year and now has for us a full double album of progressive and extreme metal. Yes folks, we're talking about Devin Townsend, formerly of the extreme metal act Strapping Young Lad and the frontman of the Devin Townsend project. He's a musician with a gift for versatility, a ton of real explosive presence, and sheer oddball weirdness in his lyrics that can send many of his projects spiraling into sheer madness, or can at least be a little bit difficult to take somewhat seriously. And to be fair, I get the feeling that Townsend recognizes this to some extent, as he's made some truly hilarious metal records and songs that still manage to kick all amounts of ass. Now, I was first introduced to him through his 2007 album Ziltoid the Omniscient, a record about a power-mad galactic overlord searching the universe for the perfect cup of coffee, and with an ending twist that really shouldn't be as fun surprise as it is. I gotta admit, it really gripped me. I dug it. Now, in terms of pure Devin Townsend albums under his name, it was his last until now, but that doesn't mean he wasn't active. Instead, after quitting booze and drugs, he embarked on the Devin Townsend Project, a series of 5 albums that showcase 5 different sides of Townsend's experimental tendencies to varied amounts of success, the last being more pop and hard rock flavored album Epicloud in 2012. So when I heard that he was coming back with a double album this year, a sequel to Ziltoid the Omniscient, I honestly didn't have the slightest clue what was coming, but I was looking forward to it, so I took several deep breaths, braced myself, and plunged in. What'd I get? Well, to begin here, I think I'm going to be taking a page from fellow YouTube reviewers' books, and I need to split this review into 2 parts. Not just because it's a double album, but because conceptually and in execution, the 2 sides of this double album are wildly different. So today, I'm going to be talking about the first disc, Sky Blue, and tomorrow I'll be discussing what most people were expecting, the second disc, Dark Matters, and the true sequel to Ziltoid. But for those of you just looking for a straight answer whether or not this album is good or worth your time, folks, it's the Devin Townsend project. Do I honestly need to say more here? So, okay, to start, Sky Blue. Now, the first thing to make apparent, this is a Devin Townsend project album, both in instrumentation and in its themes. Gloriously symphonic with full walls of roaring guitars, gleaming keyboard lines, and pounding drums. And the first definitely positive step, most of the drum triggers that irked me so much on Deconstruction are completely gone, so good positive step right out of the gate. And just like on Epicloud, one of Devin Townsend's greatest hidden strengths shines through here: his pop sensibility. In an alternate universe, his powerfully melodic hooks and his killer choruses would dominate radio. And here it lends Devin Townsend's material a powerful feel of euphoria, even as his riffs crunch with explosive power and he howls into the microphone. Hell, as with previous albums, there are songs where he interpolates the melodies of existing pop songs into entirely new compositions. The most notable being on the title track that is very recognizable as being strikingly similar to one of my favorite Usher songs from 2010, DJ's Got Us Fallen in Love. And I gotta admit, it doesn't quite unseat Usher here, if only because I feel that the heavier, darker vibe of Devin Townsend's take on it strips away some of the killer tightness that characterizes Usher's version of the song. But then again, Devin Townsend doesn't have a verse from Pitbull, so give and take here. Now, the other significant interpolation is on Silent Militia, and it's of Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Round Like a Record, which according to Devin Townsend was done in the style of will.i.am. And honestly, I'd like to know what songs beyond Scream and Shout that Devin Townsend heard from will.i.am, because he took the catchy beat progression and some of the textures from that song, really the best pieces of it, and fused it with a great melody line, a phenomenally heavy groove, and some of his most explosive vocals on this entire album. I gotta admit, Silent Militia probably my favorite song. Now, it's one of the reasons why I consider Devin Townsend's material such a great introduction to more extreme progressive metal, and combined with Anneke van Giersbergen's gorgeous voice, often getting equal time with Townsend's in several beautiful harmonies, the symphonic side of Sky Blue is definitely impressive. Now, if I were to criticize Townsend's brand of production here, it'd be a similar criticism that I would honestly give to Epicloud. He can occasionally let some of the sounds linger just a little bit too long in the mix to intensify that wall of sound, and that can drown out some of the better textures that come through. In fact, this album's tendency to linger, particularly on its back half, does get a little bit distracting. Most of this is tied up to some of the ambient tendencies that were present on his fourth Devin Townsend project album, Ghost. And yet on a record with such sticky, memorable hooks, I gotta say, brevity can be a real bonus. You shouldn't want this record to drag. And let me stress this, when this album has that tighter focus, you get some stellar moments. I already mentioned Silent Militia, but there's also the guitar and keyboard interplay and fantastic melody on Fallout, the acoustic edge on Midnight Sun, the surging symphonic power of Universal Flame, the ghostly vocals and bells on Forever, and I'd be remiss not to mention the crowd-driven vocals of Before We Die that bleeds into this haze of flute-punctuated ambience that shows how Devin Townsend never forgets musical dynamics in the best possible way. God, I love that song. Now at this point, we have to talk about lyrics and themes. And you know what, at first glance, this record doesn't seem to be that far removed from many of the uplifting anthems that Devin Townsend wrote on previous albums. Now, granted, he's one of the best damn writers in the industry for making these sort of songs, but by necessity, most of the poetry in these sorts of tracks have to go broad, and that can make some of the songs ring as a little bit thinly sketched, especially considering that he's hit many of these themes plenty of times over the past 5 years. And coupled with, at first listen, there didn't seem to be a real cohesive theme, it made the sound feel a little bit weightless to me. Potent concepts, to be sure, but lacking that real human element to anchor them and make them feel relatable. But then I dug up an interview with Devin Townsend, where he said that many people in his life had passed away when he was writing this album, and suddenly, it snaps into focus. Much like the last record from Flying Lotus, that great album, You're Dead, Devin Townsend's Sky Blue is an examination of how one deals with encroaching death in all of its myriad facets. And yet where Flying Lotus opted for something of a more stable narrative, Devin Townsend is more abstract. There is celebration of life and love on tracks like Rejoice and Universal Flame and Warrior, and of course on Before We Die, contemplation of that eternity beyond and what we might do before that sudden stop on Fallout and Forever. And yet Devin Townsend is also keen enough to show more than just his own perspective, to show others going through every single stage of grief before finally approaching some form of acceptance. And the Flying Lotus comparison gets even more striking when you consider the final two tracks. The moments of surging beauty as they face death, having lived that full life, and the final song, A Message from Beyond. And yet the very final message here is very different. Where Flying Lotus urged the listener to celebrate life in face of what might come after and that end, Devin Townsend's whisper is not to mourn, implying that something far greater does indeed come after that next great adventure. It's a message that feels surprisingly intimate on such an epic, grand record, and it's a sort of humanizing moment that does wonders to anchor this album, make it feel relatable, and make it really tug on the heartstrings, if I can be honest. So to conclude, we might have come for Ziltoid 2, but that's coming later, because Z2 Sky Blue is satisfying in its own right, an explosively energetic, progressive metal record that manages to tackle death with vigor and real hope. Devin Townsend has mentioned in his reviews that he's more proud of this record than Dark Matters, that Ziltoid sequel, and that's because this disc is definitely something to be really proud of. For me, it's a solid 8 out of 10, and definitely a recommendation if you're a fan, or hell, even if you're looking for a good introduction to a brand of extreme metal that is surprisingly accessible and listenable. It's rare that you get an album exploring death that is this triumphant, and this one deserves all of the celebration. So check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. What did you guys think of this record? Did it really grip you the same way it gripped me? Were you looking forward more to this Devin Townsend project album, or were you looking forward to Ziltoid 2? Either way, that's coming up next. But if there's any other albums coming up that you want me to take a look at, or if there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.